Welcome to the Elements of Spirit readings for the element of air for this week of March 13th, 2017. These air readings are applicable to sun signs of Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini. So if you haven't already, check out the ether reading for a sense of what's going on in this space, because this reading for the air sign will refer back to that ether reading and give you a different spin based on your element of air. This applies to sun, moon, and rising signs, but just to keep it simple in this series, we're really working with the sun signs. So well, let's see, I'm gonna write this down. So what's really cool is like in that beautiful image that we got from the ether readings, it was that sort of edge of the world, and I am most effective focusing on one thing at a time. So one of the crazy things about being very airy is that you can see the forest and the trees at the same time, and you get this kind of like oscillating view between the macro and the micro and the macro and the micro and the macro and the micro and the macro and the micro, because theoretically as an element air, you're more able to conceive of, understand, and process the ideals and abstractions of this experience, of this life. And so what this is actually saying to you, it's like some sweet, gentle reminders here. Like, you don't have to do everything all at once. And especially this week, it's better to take one thing at a time. And it seems like there's a lot of processing that's actually catching up with you guys. Like a lot of things that you've been chewing over in the last, like even 2-3 months, as we approach the spring equinox. I guess it's next weekish. It's important that you since the winter, right? So it's 3 months since the winter solstice. A lot of multiple layers of growth have been going on for you, and what it's saying to me is that it feels like you're processing multiple things through like separate experiences. So you have one experience in which you process something about, let's say, your children, family, job, life, well-being, and purpose, right? One thing happens that causes you to learn something about all of that. The advising this week from the element of air is to process, instead of many things through one experience, it's to process one thing through many experiences. So it says to like consciously this week choose one thing to work on at a time, and then tying it back to the ether reading and saying, I choose to articulate the truth in support of sustainable priorities. So that's a good example of like, well, what is the most pressing truth that you need to articulate? What do you need to deal with the most? Is it your physical experience of, how your structure and budget and time and schedule and, routine is? Does it have to do with your emotional well-being? Are you happy? Are you sad? How do you feel? What's going on? Does it have to do with the truth that you need to articulate in support of sustainable priorities, a sustainable cosmology? Does it have to do with the way you see the world, with how you think about things, with, where are you lacking? Where do you feel compromised? Where do you feel imbalanced? Is it in your overall sense of well-being? Is it in your spirit? Is it your physical, emotional, mental, spiritual experience? Pick one of those. What area do you have some new truth about? What part of your experience do you have a new understanding about? Where is the point of, it's not weakness, but where is the point of focus? That's what they showed me, right? I drew this before I wrote the affirmation out. I drew that one point. That was all that was on the page. Where is your point of focus? Where do you want to start? You can either pick the place that's like most hot to you right now, or just pick somewhere. Pick some area of your experience where you can articulate your truth. Maybe in a place where you have not articulated your truth, or denied your truth, or enforced or encouraged delusion. Someplace where you've been deceiving yourself. I've been avoiding looking at this focusing on this, thinking about this. And now it's time to look at it, focus on it, think about it, articulate some sort of truth about it in support of a sustainable worldview or in support of sustainable priorities. Oh, and that's kind of it. Saying like, do that. By focusing on that one area of your experience, you end up giving yourself, you end up learning multiple lessons, as opposed to learning one thing through multiple experiences. You're going to learn many things through one point of focus. Do you see what I'm saying? So this reading is about how to chip away at a crustified, calcified worldview that is no longer working, and through the articulation of one truth in support of sustainable priorities, you create the space for yourself to learn new things about this one area of your experience, and also let go of a lot of things that are just not as important as this initial priority that you articulate. By all means, if you move through an initial priority, articulate a new one. I'm just saying the guidance from this air reading for the element of air says, I am most effective focusing on one thing at a time. That's true for this week, is what I'm saying to you. It doesn't feel like air signs are not typically the most effective, only focusing on one thing at a time. You're better, like I said, oscillating between the forest and the tree, 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 and working to establish a perspective of consciousness that is able to simultaneously clock the forest and the trees at the same time. This week, we zero in on the trees, just the trees. Just the tree, one tree at a time. And through the careful examination of that one tree, because I am most effective focusing on one thing at a time, you are more able to articulate the truth, your truth, in support of a sustainable cosmology, worldview, or in support of sustainable priorities. Okay? Love you. Thank you. See you next week.